Welcome back to Commentators Corner. It's been a little while, but we are back and ready to go here in the middle of March. Tyler Reedy and Brennan Preisman here with you. Brennan, it's one of the best times of the year. Basketball, baseball, soccer, football, everything is overlapping right now. We've got a lot to talk about today.
We certainly do. Haven't had this podcast for 3 weeks. And in that time, we've missed state basketball, a crazy NFL free agent signing, the MLB lockout ending and free agency immediately devolving into chaos, and the NBA and the first 2 rounds of March Madness, so we certainly have a lot to get into. But obviously we're going to start with closer to home and prep basketball. Went down to Lincoln and made some noise.
Yep, did exactly what Coach Luca was talking about. The goal for every season for the Junior Jays, always to win the district title, and got the Nets down at home, and then you said it perfectly. You go down to state and make some noise, and make some noise. They did. 53-48, they beat Westside in the quarterfinal round. Westside was the 3 seed in the tournament, but many consider them to be the 1 after they took down Bellevue West and Millard North both in the Metro Conference tournament in December. The Junior Jays pulled off the upset. Luke Jungers with 24 points in that one, and then Thursday fell to Bellevue West, 68-51 in the semifinals, but a good run for the Junior Jays. Some excellent games as well. You look at the Lincoln Northeast game in the district final, 3 overtimes to get them there, and then the Westside game as well.
Yeah,
that was fun.
Unlike last year, there's no shame in the semifinal loss to Bellevue West. Like, the fact that this team was able to make it there is a huge testament to their grit and how hard they've worked all year, and they definitely deserved to beat Westside that game because Westside shot poorly and Prep ended up just wanting it a little bit more there at the end. Another team who's been wanting it more quite a bit is the undefeated Creighton Prep baseball team. They've scored at least 9 runs in all 3 outings so far. Got a 9-1 win over Elkhorn North on opening day. Elliott Peterson went 4 of 4 in that game. Then against Omaha Central, lot of scoring.
10-run inning.
Yeah, 15-7, but the Jays did score 10 runs in the inning. Thomas Lydon pitched 2 1/3 of no-hit ball with 5 strikeouts to get the win. And then yesterday they beat Waverly pretty easily. Ryan Bauer pitched 5 innings, 4 hits, 4 strikeouts, and Prep Mercy ruled Waverly 12-1. Kobe Hatcher had 3 hits and 4 at-bats and scored 3 times as well as 2 RBI. So offense certainly cooking right now for the Junior Jays.
Yeah, Hatcher and Summers both had home runs yesterday. Grant Summers has been a really good pickup. Junior in his first year on varsity. Made some great defensive plays on opening day against Elkhorn North at shortstop. He's commanded that position really well, and then at the plate, he's come through several times working out of that 8-9 spot, bottom of the order. Been really effective offensively. But yeah, Junior Jays advertised to be a top 5 team in the state, coming off the district semifinal loss last season, and the pitching's had some up and downs. It wasn't great on Saturday. Kind of had to get it done by committee, but Thomas Lydon locked it down, as you said. But aside from that, O'Malley and Bauer have been phenomenal in the game last Thursday and the game yesterday, and offense fantastic as well. So then soccer as well. We'll have a soccer broadcast today, assuming the weather doesn't do anything to that game. I'm sure it won't because it's soccer after all. They'll play in any condition. But Prep against Millard North at 4:30. It'll be on CPSN. I'll have the call for that one. And Prep soccer also undefeated, though they've only played 1 game, and it was a great game last Thursday night at Omaha Central. 2-1 victory on a last-minute goal by Thomas Pasali. Creighton Prep also trying to get a bad taste out of their mouth on the soccer field. Lost in the state semifinals to Lincoln Southwest last season, although they did win the Metro Conference tournament. Junior Jays looking for a big year this year on the pitch as well.
And they've certainly got the talent to do it. There are a lot of seniors on the team that we spend a lot of time with in classes, and there's a confidence around this team that there kind of was last year, but there's more of it now because a lot of those guys, they were there. They know what it takes to win those tight games. And as you mentioned, Pisali got the last-second goal for Prep against Central. So certainly a team that can come through in the clutch. I would be helping with the broadcast today, but I was supposed to have a track meet. Of course, the rain had other plans. Rain doesn't stop the soccer broadcast from happening, though, so make sure to catch Tyler on this network at 4:30. Another thing that the rain can't stop, the NFL news cycle.
Yeah.
It will not stop.
So it is that time of year. NFL free agency just hit one of its biggest peaks we've ever seen. I mean, every year you get to this point where it's early March and you have that 1 week or 2 week period where everybody's signing and trades are being made, but this year was just different.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, look at some of the headlines. Where do you even start? I guess we can probably start with the albatross out of the whole thing, which was Tom Brady retiring and then coming back.
Well, the crazy thing about Brady, too, is I'm not sure anyone was completely shocked by this. I mean, he's been compared to Michael Jordan so many times because their competitiveness, their track record in postseason play, their intensity when it comes to both teammates and opponents, all of that. And Jordan had to retire 3 times before he finally walked away for good. So it's not really a shock for Brady, but a lot of people that I've been reading and listening to, they think that this was kind of a calculated move on Brady's part. He's looking at the rest of the NFC, and we'll get to why in a bit, and he's like, wait a second. That's like a free Super Bowl trip if I can get like a half-decent supporting cast around me. I think he said in like 2015 or whatever, I'm not going to retire till I suck. Last year he led the NFL in passing yardage and touchdowns, so he definitely doesn't suck. And my guess is we'll be seeing him for a couple more years to go, but yeah, it was kind of less shocking, it seems. It does seem like the type of thing he would do to come back because he's one of the most competitive guys in all of sports.
He's a competitive maniac. He just can't live without football, at least not yet. I think he loves his family just like any sane human being would, but you get to a point where you're away from the game for a month and a half, and I mean, just think about it. One of the things I was looking at is the fact that he was away from the game in a time when nothing was happening. He wasn't missing anything, and yet still he wanted to come back that badly. That just shows you the kind of competitiveness he has.
And he's already working out with guys like Julian Edelman. Speaking of quarterbacks and their receivers, one of the most potent combinations in the NFL last year was broken up when it was announced a couple of days ago, and really what I think was the most shocking move of the offseason, that Davante Adams was traded to the Raiders. I believe it was a first and a second-round pick in this year's upcoming draft from the Raiders to Green Bay in return for Adams. And Las Vegas has since given Adams a contract that makes him the richest receiver in the game, 5 years, $141 million. Well-deserved for a guy who's either number 1 or number 2 as a receiver right now in the NFL. If he's behind anybody, it's Cooper Kupp. But, man, after getting Rodgers back, the Packers' willingness to let Adams go is shocking to me.
Yeah, as you said, Rodgers re-signed just 9 days before Adams was traded away to Las Vegas. But in addition to Adams, AFC West was the big winner of this free agency period. You look at the Raiders, not only did they get Adams, signed Chandler Jones, the star linebacker defensive end, to a 3-year, $51 million deal. The Chargers got J.C. Jackson for 5 years, $82.5 million. Excellent.
And Khalil Mack.
Yep, excellent corner. Khalil Mack as well, traded to the Chargers. Kansas City Chiefs got Juju Smith-Schuster to help bolster the wide receiver position.
Oh, yeah, because they need some bolstering.
Yeah, they did lose Byron Pringle, but it'll be Hill, Hardman, and Smith-Schuster. And then Justin Reed, likely to replace Tyrann Mathieu, though nothing's official yet. Reed was picked up by the Kansas City Chiefs at safety. And then the Denver Broncos really got free agency kicked off with a massive deal, getting Russell Wilson in the trade with Seattle.
Yeah, it was a couple hours after the news broke that Aaron Rodgers was going to return to Green Bay. A couple hours later, Denver's got Russell Wilson. Now it's a solid trade. Wilson obviously not the same player anymore necessarily that's going to guarantee your team a Super Bowl, but Denver had a very good core last year. Skill positions, defense, special teams. They had it all. The one thing they were missing was quarterback. Drew Lock was serviceable, but as we saw in last year's playoffs, a serviceable quarterback is not good enough to win in the NFL anymore. So the Broncos went out and got a guy who they think might be able to help him. And it's really funny that the year after John Elway has moved into more of a consultant role, they go out and get a quarterback under 6 foot, because that was always the thing with the Broncos, is that they wouldn't sign a short quarterback. Well, they've got one now, and he's still pretty good. I like the signing for them. I think he's going to be able to help that core develop into the play. Same thing with Matt Ryan to the Colts, which was just announced yesterday. I think that's a solid trade for Indianapolis, and I think that might enable both of those teams to get to the playoffs. And you mentioned the AFC West. That's going to be an absolute bloodbath this year. So what I'm saying is, if we're looking at Super Bowl bets, look at the Bills. The Patriots are standing pat. The Dolphins, I have no idea what they're doing with their quarterback situation. Are they keeping Tua? Are they trying to trade him? Are they trying to pick somebody else up in free agency, and who is that going to be? The Jets are the Jets. Like, the AFC West could theoretically be one of those divisions where everybody beats each other up, and the winner is like some 11-6 team that loses in the wild card round because everybody is losing their divisional games. So I'd say right now, if you're already looking into Super Bowl bets, I'd take the Bills to make it back.
Yeah, it's a good plan. It's a good plan because AFC West is going to be a struggle. AFC North should be a tough one, as it always is. Cincinnati's going to be good. Baltimore always hangs around, especially with Lamar. See how Pittsburgh might be able to bounce back, picking up Mitch Trubisky.
Not good.
And Cleveland.
Yeah,
this is a big one, too. Deshaun Watson finally has a new home with the Cleveland Browns. You don't like it?
Well, it's not necessarily like scheme fit or anything. I mean, they also did pick up Amari Cooper, who's still a very good receiver after his time with the Cowboys. But it's less football-related and more off-the-field stuff. Obviously, the criminal charges were dropped, I believe, last week, 2 weeks ago for Watson. But there are still 22 cases remaining in civil court. And to me, this is the Browns' ownership, front office, and coaching staff basically saying, hey, we know we're like, in the Me Too era and we're supposed to be caring about, what women have to say and women's rights and all that, but we like money and winning football games slightly more than we care about our principles, which, as we've seen throughout the past couple of years, is really just the NFL in general. You'll see this a lot. I mean, to an extent, you saw it with guys like Ray Rice only getting suspended for 4 games, but the NFL will always take the money and winning over any sort of principled stand that they could or should take. And to me, it just sucks for like women, especially women who were fans of the Browns, because what this is basically their voices being ignored because somebody can throw a football pretty well. So it kind of sucks. I guess for football analysis, he could take that team back to the playoffs, but dealing with the Bengals coming off a Super Bowl run, the Ravens, who have an MVP on their team, who's still somehow not in the top 5 AFC quarterbacks for a lot of people for some reason. I don't know. I'm not sure if he's going to play or how much, but he could definitely throw a monkey wrench into the AFC if he is playing and playing well.
Yeah, so NFL free agency, big week. Unless you got anything else you want to talk about there, we can probably move it on to baseball.
Not for the NFL. Yeah, let's bring it back to baseball.
Baseball baseball got itself into an 0-2 count in the beginning of March 1st, reached the deadline toward the collective bargaining agreement, did not accept a proposal between the owners and the players' union, had to cancel the first week of the season. It was a terrible day for the game, but then 9 days later on March 10th, a proposal and agreement was reached, and baseball will be played. It already is being played in Arizona and Florida in spring training, and opening day will be on April 7th with the lockout over. I have tickets for a game on April 8th, so We're getting right into it, baby. And free agency, as expected, has been big as well. So start with big moves being made with the former, or rather, I guess, last year world champion Atlanta Braves. Freddie Freeman, their longtime homegrown first baseman, is gone to Los Angeles. Atlanta let him walk to go to the Dodgers, 2020 world champion, and in return, they brought in Matt Olson, the Atlanta native first baseman from the Oakland A's, to fill his spot. Atlanta gave Oakland back a huge load of prospects. 4 of their top 15 guys, including Christian Pache, who saw plenty of minutes in the outfield last year with Ronald Acuna Jr. out. So that's a big move.
Mm-hmm.
LA seemingly always gets better.
Yeah. It's crazy how they have enough cap space to do that. They re-signed Clayton Kershaw, got Freddie Freeman. I mean, I guess once an Atlanta sports team wins a title, things just flip on their heads. I mean, giving away Freeman is a pretty tough decision to make, especially considering how well he played last year in the postseason. But assuming Acuna is going to be back for the Braves, they should still be well positioned to contend in the NL.
Absolutely. They do lose Jorge Soler, who hit that iconic tape measure home run in Game 6 of the World Series last year. Soler going to Miami, 48 home run hitter 3 years ago in 2019. But Kris Bryant, another big-time player, a former third baseman for the Chicago Cubs, world champion third baseman, spent the second half of last season with the Giants after the Cubs did the trade deadline fire sale. And now he's heading to Colorado, who's been in a weird position for the last 3 years. Not really sure whether they're committed to the rebuild or not. They haven't made any moves with Trevor Story. Now Story's gone to Boston. But Kris Bryant, 7 years, $182 million deal with the Rockies. Big time.
Yeah, that's a lot of money. And Bryant's peak years might be behind him. But baseball, I would argue, is of the 4 major American sports, and 5 if you include soccer, I'd argue that baseball is probably the best sport in which to be an aging star. Obviously, you got guys like LeBron James and Tom Brady who have defied the aging curve. But with baseball, it's far easier to do that because there's less stress on your body, and especially when you're on defense, the ball may only be hit to you like once a game. So definitely good for Bryant, and that Colorado air will probably help him get some juice back in the bat because, as we both know, that elevation in Colorado can really help a hitter hit some more home runs.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's a pretty big deal, not as huge as the other ones, between the Twins and the Yankees. Gary Sanchez, the longtime catcher for New York, had some down years the last 3 years. He's off to Minnesota to play for the Twins, and in return, the Yankees get back Josh Donaldson, the third baseman, to shore up their infield, former American League MVP, and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, former Texas Ranger, at shortstop as well. So those are the biggest moves. And speaking of New York, there's we've already seen with Kyrie Irving the whole situation with not being able to play there because of the vaccination mandate. That could go into effect for baseball as well. There's currently an order in place right now. There's discussion about whether or not it could be lifted, but New York and Toronto might enforce rules that could restrict unvaccinated players from playing at home this season. And that's big because the Yankees and the Mets now both have their sights firmly set on a world championship because Steve Cohen's been spending like crazy in Queens.
I've heard a lot of Steve Cohen's been throwing around a lot of money. A name I've heard thrown around a lot in that vaccine debate is Aaron Judge. Yep. Much like Aaron Rodgers, he's never come out and given a full affirmative or negative on whether or not he's vaccinated. But if he's not, he's one of the best power hitters in the game. That really hurts the Yankees' World Series hopes. Yeah,
absolutely. And then a little closer to home, Kansas City Royals made some moves as they're trying to bounce back from a pretty long rebuild and get back in a position to make a World Series run like they did in 2014-2015. Amir Garrett traded over from the Cincinnati Reds. He's a big left-handed reliever. And then Zach Greinke, who started his career and won a Cy Young in Kansas City back in 2009, he's back to the Royals at the age of 38 in a one-year, $13 million deal. And then Bobby Witt Jr., named the top prospect in baseball. Yep, I have his autograph playing with the Storm Chasers last year.
Call him up.
Oh, yeah. Bobby Witt Jr. is expected to be an opening day starter for the Royals this season, as long as spring training goes swimmingly. And so far, it's been pretty good. So something to watch for. And lineup just released for today's game for Kansas City. He's batting second at third base. So there you go. Bobby Witt Jr.
After the baseball, it's probably time to get to basketball. We got quite a bit to cover. We're going to go high school, then college, then pro on this 9th anniversary of Dunk City, that Florida Gulf Coast 15 seed. We got another 15 seed to talk about. But first, high school basketball. Coach Tim Cannon of Millard North announced his retirement yesterday. Going out about the best way he could go out. Back-to-back titles for the Mustangs. Hunter Salas, Jaden Johnson, and St. Thomas. Last year, that triumvirate left for college. This year, Jason Green and David Harmon stepped up into much bigger roles, got it back-to-back. So it's nice to see Cannon, who's one of the most well-respected coaches in the Metro, go out on top like that. Bell West, of course, lost in the finals to Millard North for the second consecutive year, but they will return Josiah Doetzler and Jacob Arope along with most of their other core. I was looking at their roster and pregame for the final. I think they've got 3 seniors total on that roster. So they're going to be good to go again. Speaking of good to go again, another repeat. Britt Prince and Elkhorn North in Class B girls gets her second title as a sophomore. Already 27 D1 offers for her. More likely to pour in for the back-to-back state champ now. In Class A basketball, Taylor Mccabe, the senior for Fremont, headed to Iowa next year, trying to follow in the footsteps of Caitlin Clark, who recently lost to Creighton in the women's second-round March Madness. Got her revenge on Lincoln Pius for the finals loss last year and got Fremont the title. And then Westside and Scott, some disappointing tournaments for both of them. Both teams expected to go pretty far and win the title, but Westside out first round of prep, as we talked about, and Scott lost both title games, girls to Elkhorn North and boys to Lincoln Southwest, I believe.
Well, Lincoln Southwest in A.
Who was it?
I can look you up real quick.
Yeah, but interesting state tournaments for both of those schools. And another interesting tournament.
Roncalli.
Yeah, that's who it was. Another interesting tournament going on right now is the college basketball one, March Madness. And we mentioned Dunk City. We might as well go straight into it with the Peacocks of St. Peter's, the 15 seed, upsetting Kentucky. Their run is still going. The third 15 seed ever to make the Sweet 16 at this point. And Tyler, to me, they look like kind of legit.
Yeah, I mean, there's always that team every year, whether it's an 11 seed or a 10 seed or 12 seed, there's always that team that gets on that run. And, I mean, everybody knows that once you get to March, anything goes. Doesn't matter how the regular season went. Doesn't matter how the conference tournament went, as we saw with the Iowa Hawkeyes being eliminated first round after Big Ten title. Once you get to March, it's anybody's ball game, and if you get hot at the right time, who knows how far you can go. And St. Peter's, like you said, in the Sweet 16 after beating Kentucky and Murray State. Got a tough challenge, though, coming up with Purdue. Boilermakers have had a good tournament, beating Yale by 22, beating your Texas Longhorns by 10.
Well, when you're playing 8-on-5, pretty easy to win ball games, but we don't have to.
Okay,
we don't have to.
Here we go.
46-12. That's all I'm going to say. And you mentioned double-digit seeds. You're absolutely right. There are 4 double-digit seeds in the Sweet 16 along with St. Peter's. You've got Miami as a 10, Iowa State as an 11, and then a team I want to talk about, 11-seeded Michigan.
Yeah.
How legitimate are any Final Four hopes that their fans may have? Because they beat Colorado State, and they were able to coast away from them pretty easily late in the game. We were watching that at lunch 2 Thursdays ago, and they won that game fairly easily. They came up in the clutch, beat number 3 Tennessee, who I had as a dark horse Final Four team, 76-68. Hunter Dickinson had 27 points, 11 boards, and we've seen a lot in March Madness. The best individual player wins these games quite often. They've got Villanova on the 24th, and then if they win that, the winner of Arizona-Houston would be on the 26th. Could this be a Final Four team?
I think there's a good chance they could move into the Elite Eight. I think they match up well with Villanova. Nova is not a greatly sized team, and Michigan obviously loves to make their money on the inside with Hunter Dickinson spinning on guys in the paint, grabbing rebounds. That's how they dismantled Colorado State down the stretch in round 1, and also how they beat Tennessee with those 27, as you said. But I think no matter who comes out of the Arizona-Houston game in the round of 16, they're going to beat Michigan, because Arizona, that crazy game against TCU, 85-80 in overtime, we saw what they can do in the paint. The size advantage, there was that huge putback dunk. Benedict Matherin in overtime, he had, 32 points, 30 points?
Like
yeah. So Arizona, they have immense talent underneath the hoop. And then Houston is a high-flying offense as well. I just don't think Michigan would be able to keep up with either of them. But I do think there's a shot that they can beat Villanova.
I don't know. I definitely give Michigan a puncher's chance to make the Final Four.
Okay.
Are you going to laugh at the joke?
Punch. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
I've heard it so many times now. I'm just getting used to it. But
it could be an us against the world mentality thing for them. And honestly, it's working. You need some motivation in March. Speaking of motivation, a team that seemed to lack some in recent weeks, the Duke Blue Devils, been looking pretty solid. Coasted in the Cal State Fullerton game, beat Michigan State in a comeback victory. Now they've got a Texas Tech team that didn't look great but still managed to survive your Fighting Irish 59-53. Should we be talking about them as a title team, or is this more of a Gonzaga versus the field type of year?
It's hard because I don't know how to feel about Gonzaga, because on one hand, you look at the struggles they had against Georgia State, being tied with them with 12 minutes left. They did win by 21. And then only beating Memphis, the 9th seed, by 4. Part of me wants to think, okay, Gonzaga.
And they were down in the second half. Yeah, 12 minutes to go.
This might not be their year. And Arkansas, the 4 seed, can certainly take down the top teams. We saw it with Auburn earlier this year, but maybe Gonzaga winning these close games is a good thing for them, because rather than coasting through the early part of the tournament and then not knowing what to do when the big teams get on you in the late rounds, maybe this adversity is good for them, figuring out how to fight through it early in the tournament so they're well equipped for it later on. So I don't know. I feel like Gonzaga is definitely more talented than Duke, and if they can get past Arkansas without dealing with too much fatigue, because that is only 2 days between games now, Thursday and Saturday.
Yeah.
Gonzaga can get past Arkansas, and it looks like a fairly comfortable win. It doesn't look like they're tired or dealing with a whole lot of pressure. I think they'll be in a good position to beat Duke, and Texas Tech is also a team that can give Duke a shot, although offense wasn't great against Notre Dame, 59-53 win for them. But that west quadrant of the bracket is certainly looking much more up for grabs than it did in the beginning.
Yeah, my one last dark horse Final Four pick. Can I interest you in North Carolina?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
I hate it because I have UCLA in the Final Four, but but why not?
Brady, Manic, Armando Bacot, Caleb Love, a great trio. They were mauling Baylor, a 1 seed before, I believe it wasn't Bacot who was it. It was Manic.
Manic got tossed.
Yeah, he threw an elbow at somebody and fouled out. Partially refereed, but again, we don't have to talk about the officials, even though I very badly want to. But that's a team that, for some reason, seems really motivated. They came into Cameron Indoor Stadium in Coach K's last home game and stomped Duke. They were not interested in any of the, pizzazz or, let's honor Coach K. No, this is a team that very badly wants to win. And if they can get past UCLA, it's either going to be Purdue, who I think is fairly flawed, or St. Peter's, standing in between them and the Final Four. And after that, who knows how far that team – it is still North Carolina in the Final Four. They don't have Roy Williams anymore. Hubert Davis, the former North Carolina guard, is now the coach. But I think you still have to watch out for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that offense has had its ups and downs this season, but when it's up, it's almost up higher than any other team in the country other than maybe Gonzaga or Auburn. But, North Carolina getting hot at the right time. UCLA going to be a challenge. I was worried about the Bruins in the second round after they struggled first round against Akron, only beating the Zips by a single-digit margin, but no problem with St. Mary's for the Bruins, the 4-versus-5 game. But now UCLA going up against North Carolina. That's a big test with the way the Heels are playing. And then the Midwest quadrant, the one side we haven't gotten to yet, Kansas and Providence. It's been chalk on that side of things, 1-versus-4, although Richmond did pull an upset of Iowa, and Creighton had an overtime win over San Diego State in the first round.
It's going to be Kansas out of that region.
Kansas against Providence.
Almost certainly.
Friday night, and then the other one has been a surprise. Iowa State, the 11 seed, upset with Wisconsin with Chucky Hepburn going down early with an ankle injury against the 10 seed Miami of Florida, who rolled Auburn 79-61. Tigers just did not look like themselves at all. So an 11 versus 10 seed matchup in the round of 16 down there.
The SEC has really been struggling in this tournament. It's been kind of interesting to watch, and the Big Ten's hopes are down to Purdue, who, as I've mentioned, I don't really like as a Final Four team, and then Michigan, who probably didn't make a lot of friends this year. I mean, I remember on Selection Sunday, there were people saying, wait, why in the world is Michigan in? They're only a 17-14 regular season team who didn't do well in their conference tournament. This is ridiculous, but that's why you play the games.
Yep, so with that we can move on to the National Basketball Association.
Season's going to end on, on April 10th. So let me do my math real quick. We've got 19 days to go of NBA basketball before the playoffs start. This has been one of the most entertaining seasons narrative-wise we've had in a long time. Is you mentioned Kyrie Irving earlier, the whole Kyrie's only playing once or twice a week thing, and playing very well. Last night, LeBron James had a 30-point triple-double against his former team, the Cleveland Cavaliers. Quick standings check. Right now, Miami is the 1 seed in the East at 47-25, but Philadelphia, Milwaukee, and Boston are all 2.5 games behind the Heat. Then in the West, it's Phoenix versus the Field. The Suns are 58-14, best record in the league by a mile, 9 games ahead of the 2 seed Grizzlies, who are 49-23. Golden State, 47-24, is a game and a half behind the Grizzlies, but with Steph Curry injured, they're probably not going to get very far. The play-in for both sides right now is Toronto, Brooklyn, Charlotte, and Atlanta. And in the West, it's Minnesota, the Clippers, the Lakers, and the Pelicans. So you got the MVP odds up on your iPad. I did not look at those. I personally just went and looked at the stats and who I thought should win it. So I'll go from 5-1, because to me this MVP race really feels like a 3-horse race. Mm-hmm. There's only 3 guys that should win it. If anybody else wins it, it's going to be a travesty, and all 3 of these guys who I think should win it are very deserving. So number 5, Jason Tatum. 27 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists per game. As I mentioned, his Celtics are 2.5 games back of the Heat. They are 45-28 right now. Tatum is right now 8th in points per game, but these past couple of games, he's been really coming on strong. In his last 10, he's 34 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists a game, shooting 53%, 45.5%, and 90%. Celtics are 9-1 in that stretch. And this is a Celtics team that was 25-25 at one point this year, or something close to that, and have just gone on an absolute tear recently. So they're not a team I would want to play in the playoffs. Number 4, Luca Doncic of the Dallas Mavericks, and Doncic has been one of the brightest young stars in the NBA since the day he arrived. 27.9 points, 9.1 rebounds, 8.6 assists. All 3 of those stats top 20 in the league. And over his past 10, 30 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists. So he's been having an incredible year. He's pushed the Mavericks out of the danger of the play-in. They're now 2.5 games ahead of the Timberwolves, 5th in the West. And my Clippers have had to deal with him twice in a row now in the playoffs. He is definitely
not fun.
No, goodness no, it's not fun. He's almost unstoppable. But the 3 guys that have actually been unstoppable this season, and in my opinion, the only 3 guys who should win it, I'm going to go 3-1 if that's okay with you.
Okay.
Number 3, Joel Embiid.
Ooh, okay.
29.8 points, which is second, third in the league. We've got a very fun scoring race, too, between Embiid, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and LeBron James at about 30 points a game. But Embiid is 2nd in points, 8th in rebounds, also 4 assists, 3rd in player efficiency rating. He's been playing at an MVP level all year long. But at least to me, the main issue is his team's probably not going to get a top 2 seed, which I'm not sure if they want a top 2 seed, because then there's a chance they have to play the Nets first round, and I would not want to play the Nets first round because they've still got Durant and Irving, and if Ben Simmons ends up coming back, which he might not, but if he does, that's another wrinkle to that team that makes them very scary. But his team might not get a 2 seed. Milwaukee and Boston are both right there with the Sixers. And then I don't know. I feel like he's been consistent, but consistently spectacular, but there hasn't been that one game where it's just like, wow, okay, this guy is clearly the best player in the league. His stats would certainly suggest that, but there are other stats that are just as or even more so impressive than his. So that's why he's 3rd on my list. 2nd on my list is the guy who won it last year, Nicola Yokic, who is the team's leader in literally all the top 5 stats. I'll let you look at the ESPN graphic here.
Yeah, that's a lot of Jokic's.
26 points, 13.6 rebounds, 8 assists. Also leads the team in steals and blocks. And he's been playing with a horrible team. Aaron Gordon's played 66 games. Michael Porter Jr.'s played 9. Jamal Murray hasn't played at all. You could really argue that his second-best player this year has been Will Barton, which is by far the worst second banana of any of the 5 players I've got in my top 5. But the issue, as it so often is with the MVP, is going to be team record. Denver's 42-30. They've lost 2 straight. They're 6-4 in their last 10, while the teams like the Timberwolves and the Mavericks are starting to ramp it up a little bit. If they fall into the play-in, I don't think you can give Jokic the MVP, which of course means that my MVP vote, if I had one, would be going to a team that's 8-2 in their last 10, and a guy who's won 2 already, Mr. Giannis Antetokounmpo.
I do think Giannis is set up better than anybody else to win it, but, I mean, like you said, when you have 3 guys who not only are so far above the rest, but their stats are also so similar. I mean, you're looking at 3 guys.
They're top
it's basically
3 in PER.
27 to 30 points per game, 10 to 13 rebounds per game. Jokic has a slight advantage in assists, but they're all so similar. It's absolutely going to come down to winning. It's going to come down to playoff performance, and the Bucks, just looking at the runs they've been able to make the last 2-3 years, Giannis is set up well to go deep in the playoffs. As we saw last year, he's a guy that absolutely can perform well in the playoffs. Embiid hasn't proven as much of that yet. Neither has Nicola Yokic. He hasn't gone deep. Neither have the Sixers.
Well, Jokic should make the conference finals in the bubble in 2020.
That's true, but that also was the bubble.
You're right, though. The Bucks are absolutely this team I trust most, and to me, I think that record will end up playing a factor in this. I think the Bucks will leapfrog the Sixers. I don't think they're scared of the Nets, at least certainly not as much as the Sixers would be. So to me, I think it's really going to come down to narrative, because at its heart, MVP is partially a narrative award. So big game to watch for this Sunday at 5. 76ers travel to Phoenix to take on the Suns. If Joel Embiid is going to win the MVP, the Sixers have to win that game. They have to do it convincingly. And Embiid has to play really well. After that, like going into next week, the Bucks play the Sixers a week from today, next Tuesday at 6. And after that, there will only be, 12 days to go in the NBA season after that. If one of those players, either Giannis or Embiid, really dominates that game and takes over that game, I think that's who you give the MVP to. And I don't know, Jokic could probably take it, but the weird thing is, Embiid arguably has the least voter fatigue, because both Jokic and Antetokounmpo are former winners. But on the other hand, I think they've got better cases than he does. Their stats are just more impressive. The only stat Embiid has on either of them is points, and even that's not that much better than Antetokounmpo's or even Jokic's for that matter, as you mentioned. So, yeah, you're very right in saying that these are all very similar stat lines. So I do think it's going to come down to narrative and team performance as we hit the home stretch.
Yep, home stretch. We are hitting. Keep an eye on the NBA, like you said, NHL as well. Getting down in the same spot. Their playoffs start a couple weeks later than basketball, but March Madness this weekend. Sweet 16 begins Thursday and Friday. Elite 8 Saturday and Sunday. Major League Baseball, like I said, begins on April 7th. Keep an eye on spring training as well. We're seeing games across the board on MLB Network. Saw Shohei Ohtani pitching yesterday against my Royals. That was good to see. But
nice.
Yeah, big time of the year for sports. Ramping up soccer and baseball as well. Tune in at 4:30 today for the Creighton Prep Millard North soccer game. Junior Jays looking to make it 2-0 on the season.
Tyler Reedy alongside Tyler Reedy.
Oh yeah, I won't be doing some kind of imitation for color. It's just gonna be gonna be me and me. Should I imitate you? Yeah, exactly.
Imitate me with a British accent. We'll call it even.
Oh gosh, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
But yeah, anything else here before we wrap it up?
Watch out for the Clippers.
Watch out for the Clippers.
I know I'm saying that as a homer, but Kawhi Leonard and Paul George have not been ruled out for the playoffs yet, and there have been a lot of videos of Paul George in shoot around and involved in practice related activities recently. And who knows what's going on with Kawhi, but George appears to be at least a little bit more public in that he is actively trying to make a return before the end of this season. If there's a healthy Clippers team, they're my dark horse finals pick.
Okay.
Because I don't think the Suns want to play them. I know no team in the play-in would want to play them. And they match up well with all the other teams in the playoff picture, except for maybe the Grizzlies, whom I haven't seen enough of in the playoffs to know how they'll react. But watch out for the Clippers.
And one thing I'll leave you with here before we sign off for episode 25, my bracket is killing Brendan's so far.
Not really.
It is. You got knocked out pretty early on. I still have 3 of the 4 Final Four teams, but yep. Should be fun to watch. Hopefully I don't get busted any further this weekend. Auburn kind of killed me. Fortunately, I didn't have Iowa doing too much, but
neither did I.
Yep. So that'll do it for episode number 25. We will see you next week. We'll figure out the day. Probably, what is it? Friday?
Well, next week is B week, so Thursday.
All right.
Would Tuesday not work?
It might. We'll figure it out. But yeah,
we'll
either
Tuesday
Tuesday or Thursday. We'll let you know. So see you then, folks. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the soccer game this afternoon, and see you next week.